Mark Mahaney, Director of Internet Research at Citigroup.
And if you could just sum up really what the session was that you were in just now about actually looking at the reality of the economy. What are some of the themes that came out from this morning's session?
I think some of the key themes from this morning's session were, as we all know, the economies, not only in the U.S. but internationally, are getting weaker. We may see a severe deterioration before we see any sort of recovery, more severe than people realize. We have housing markets that still need to become worked off, undone. That clearly has an impact on travel. As a consumer discretionary item, travel, like other online purchases, is weakening. We're seeing only 6% growth year over year in October. Our estimate at this point is that we'll see very low single-digit growth, maybe at best, for online travel agencies in 2009.
Are there any sectors or segments within that market that are doing better than others?
Anything that's, as you can imagine in this environment, that's somehow a trade-down offering to consumers. Consumers are spending more money at Walmart and not spending money at high-end retailers. Consumers in travel are looking for the least expensive or the cheapest travel offering out there. The opaque travel offerings, the name-your-own price, the super deep discount travel offerings, those will do relatively better in this environment.
Are there any areas of travel that are untouchable? I mean, luxury high-end, for example, or the family holiday in its own right. Are there things that just won't change, or is everything up for grabs, and will everything change?
That's hard to know. Clearly all sectors of travel are going to be impacted. They're all consumer discretionary spend items. There's a very high correlation between consumer discretionary spend and stock market moves. One of the reasons for that is that consumer discretionary spend, 40% of that or more is done by usually the top quartile of household incomes, which would be most impacted by stock market corrections. So you would see weakness in travel across the board. I think, again, the only really defensible areas, the areas within travel that are going to be least impacted are those that are really focused on the most price-sensitive travel solutions. Not necessarily the most price-sensitive customers, but the most price-sensitive travel solutions.
So that's what the customer is thinking and feeling. What about the innovators here, the people that are trying to push forward? Is it a question of innovating harder, faster, better? Is there anything that they can do? Where do you think the gap lies here for this audience at Focusrite?
I'm not sure there's any real change in the basic need for innovation in the travel sector. There has been innovation in the online travel sector, but I would argue there hasn't been anything dramatic in the last 2 years. I'm sure I'm missing something, but that's the sense. Certainly there are very few public companies, and the stock market has been relatively negative on those, not only for macro reasons, but also for lack of innovation reasons. There are one or two exceptions to that. But I think that holds. The challenge for innovators these days probably isn't going to be the opportunity, it's probably just going to be the funding, be able to tap into funding in order to finish innovation paths or drive innovation paths.
We heard though this morning that from one of the venture capitalists that there's not going to be a lot of money going on there for another couple of years in terms of new funds to be raised. Is that going to impact the market?
Yeah, probably, but you would think that very long-term patient capital, especially venture capital, but also some public investments, have to at some level look at this as a great opportunity to seed companies, to invest in companies at what are obviously going to be depressed valuations. How long it takes you to get a payback on that is hard to know, but we've seen very good quality companies come through severe recessions in the past. I'll just throw out one example from a completely different sector, which was eBay, a company that went public during what was a very weak stretch of the technology capital markets. There was this company, Google, that developed throughout the entire internet boom and bust. So there are a couple of examples of here. If you have really great innovations and you can get the funding for them, you can come through the public markets. And the companies that will look to buy you, potentially, they'll be there because there's always going to be a market for real innovation and real market breakthroughs.
So if you can survive now, you'll thrive later.
Yes, that's right, if you have a great product.